As hopefully you are at SURJ Baltimore's Anti-Racist Legislative Day. Today is January 27th, all day. We will be finished at 8:30. We will try to be respectful of your time. So we have a lot to cover this evening, and we thank you for moving through it with us very quickly. There is closed captioning offered for this. So this is how you turn it on. There should be a live transcript button at the bottom of your Zoom window. You can select show subtitle. You can also click view full transcript and see the full text thread. It is generated by AI, so there may be a few errors. Please forgive those. And you can also privately message SURJ Baltimore if you would like closed captioning in those breakout sessions I mentioned at the end of the evening. Also, something important to know, if you have any questions throughout the evening, you can look in the chat for a participant named Got Questions, Ask Me. That is the lovely Erica who will be helping field those questions. This is tonight's agenda. Again, we have a lot to cover and a lot of great people to hear from. So without further ado, we will begin with a land acknowledgement. We are convening on the ancestral land of the Kaskaskia people in Baltimore City. We humbly offer our respects to the elders, past and present citizens of the Cedarville Band of the Piscataway Conoy, the Piscataway Indian Nation, and the Piscataway Conoy Tribe, all Algonquin peoples. SURJ Baltimore. That is the group hosting this evening. Who is SURJ Baltimore? Well, SURJ is a national network of groups and individuals working to undermine white supremacy. So there are chapters in cities throughout the US that all work toward racial justice. Through community organizing, mobilizing, and education, SURJ moves white people to act as a part of a multiracial majority for justice with passion and accountability. So there are some links here that will be dropped into the chat. If you'd like to look us up on Facebook, you can follow and get notice of more events like this, also events from our partners that you'll be hearing from tonight. On Twitter as well, if you're a tweeter. And then there's also the SURJ Baltimore email if you'd like to reach out to SURJ at any time. All right, now the SURJ Baltimore Legislative Team is a subset of SURJ Baltimore. So there are several kind of committees or groups that work within SURJ Baltimore because there's a lot of work to do. And the legislative team specifically focuses, it works with SURJ partners, which are BIPOC-led organizations. And we work to support their campaigns, legislation, and policies at their state, city, and government. City, state, and federal government levels. So the partners that you'll hear from tonight are SURJ's accountability partners, and they identify legislation that SURJ then supports. And the legislative team supports specifically the policy proposals that they advocate for that are moving through our representatives in Annapolis. SURJ also organizes primarily white people within our respective districts, city, state, and federal, reaching out and talking to neighbors and community organizing and leveraging those networks that white people are historically gatekeepers of is something that is really important. Another very important tenet of SURJ is to act with intention and always make sure to act. We could agonize over decisions all day long, but at the end of the day, it's important to make sure to act. So now I'm going to hand it off to Lindsay. Lindsay, who is one of the SURJ members from District 46, is going to talk briefly about the Maryland state legislative process.
Hey, everybody. This is just kind of a quick rundown. You may already be aware the General Assembly meets for 3 months a year. This year, the exact dates are January 12th to April 11th. Each district in the state of Maryland has 1 senator and between 1 and 3 delegates. And each legislator is assigned to one of the standing committees. There's actually a total of 14 standing committees. I'm not going to bother listing off all the names off because nobody's going to remember all of them. But it's important to know there's about 10 of them that usually deal with the legislation that our partners put forward. The other 4 are, legislative rules, confirming, judges, that kind of redistricting, which is happening this year, that kind of stuff. So the process that a bill has to go through to pass is it's introduced first in one or both of the chambers of the General Assembly, and it'll be referred immediately to one of the standing committees, which will hold a public hearing on it. If the committee passes the bill, if they vote, to pass it, it goes back to the chamber that it came from, and there's discussion about it. There's more public hearing. There's amendments are added and voted on. And then finally, the chamber will vote on the final form of the bill. If it passes, it has to go over to the other house where it goes through the whole process, that it went through on the first side. And after the second chamber goes through it, if they pass the bill in its final form, once both chambers agree on the final form of the bill, it goes to the governor. Obviously, he can sign it into law and he can veto it. There's also, not everybody knows, but there's also an option where if he doesn't want to approve it, but he also doesn't want to veto it for some reason, he can just kind of ignore it and let it go into law without his signature. If it's vetoed, it can still become law, but it has to go back to both chambers, and they both have to vote by a 3/5 majority to override the veto. And then to keep in mind, that some powerful people in the assembly that you should keep in mind. Bill Ferguson, who is the president of the Senate, Adrian Jones, who is the Speaker of the House, and the committee chairs of those standing legislative committees have pretty tremendous power in terms of when they hold hearings and what gets voted on and that kind of thing. And then the city delegation chairs, particularly important to Baltimore residents, are Senator McCray and Delegate Smith. Each in the House and the Senate, each county has its own delegation. And then it's an unfortunate reality. We kind of have to recognize the partisan issue. In Maryland, Democrats have wide majorities in both houses. That's just a visual representation. What that means is that anti-racist bills can pass if we can get the Democrats on board. Because we have a supermajority, that means that pretty much anything that all the Democrats agree on, they can get over a governor's veto. And then in 2021, advocates for racial equity, our partners, convinced the General Assembly to repeal the Law Enforcement's Bill of Rights, Officers' Bill of Rights, and set up a new process that should involve more oversight by civilians, stopped further use of Maryland detention facilities being, leased out or used by ICE to detain, undocumented folks, and made life without parole sentences for juveniles illegal, and then gave people who were imprisoned as minors a way to challenge their sentences that they're still serving decades later, and established a path for Baltimore City to take back control of its police department, which is something, we're also talking about in local action going forward. And, there's more than that. That's just a few items. And it's also important to note, in concert with what Barbara just said about, acting with intention, but making sure to act. Many of these victories came after years of hard work and pressure by our partners. So, just because you think, we're not going to be able to make this change overnight, that doesn't mean that it's not important to put in the work, because putting the work in can lead to significant change.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lindsay. That was a very speedy rendition of how the legislative process works in Annapolis. Ooh. Now, to continue, these are a few of the different ways that SURJ supports the anti-racist legislation that's identified by our accountability partners. bugging our reps, calls, emails, letters to legislators on specific bills. Those are often prompted by action alerts. Action alert is probably the same way that you signed up for tonight's webinar. It sends reminders, it's super easy. It does a lot of autofill, so it makes it really easy to reach out to your representatives, kind of en masse. And so when those alerts go out, it's important to act on those right away. Another thing that SURJ does is submit testimony, both oral and written testimony to committee hearings in support of the bills that our accountability partners have identified. We also get together and write some testimony templates that folks are able to use and add to and edit, for adding in their own networks and connections and things like that, or stories. But having those templates is a really easy jump off point to be able to provide solid testimony that is in alignment with the priorities of our accountability partners. Also meeting with legislators, and not just during the session, but throughout the year, it's important to maintain those relationships. If you have a good relationship with your reps, it's much easier to get time on their calendar and be able to talk to them about some of these priorities. It's also a lot easier to, once you have developed a relationship with some of these partners, to kind of have an idea about which way they're going to go on certain bills, or levers that you can push to get them to lean one way or the other. Also participating in protest actions, coalition meetings, and research when asked for support by our accountability partners. A lot of our accountability partners will often have monthly meetings that it's important to show up. You can get information straight from them. You can find out what their priorities are, and also keep up to date on their actions. And so it's also helpful just to keep yourself informed. Educating ourselves and our friends and neighbors. It's important to keep up on local politics. I've definitely learned a lot and have twigged to a lot more since getting involved. And it's really interesting to become involved more deeply in your city and your community that way. So there's definitely a benefit for everyone to go out and organize with your community. District-specific organizing keeps groups together and active between MGA sessions. So many of the groups that have formed in different districts, which are active to different degrees, depending on how large the groups are, how long they've been established, and different folks' capacities. So those groups continue meeting in between the legislative sessions, continue scheduling meetings with legislators, and strategizing to better support our accountability partners and their legislation during the session. So building those relationships, like I mentioned, partnering with the local organizations and faith communities, sometimes getting community groups, neighborhood associations to sign on to some of these priorities is also very helpful and an important component and show of support. Also petitioning and lobbying with our local politicians to promote our partner priorities. So we'll write sign-on letters and have different actions in that way to kind of hold our reps accountable. And whether they're not taking any action or they're not taking the action that we'd like them to, or that they've said they're going to take some action and we don't see any movement there. Those are ways that we can hold our reps accountable. All righty. This is a little bit more information about one of the ways, super easy ways that SURJ Baltimore supports our partners' priorities during the legislative session. Email action alerts come from Action Network, like I mentioned. It's probably how you signed up for tonight. Super easy. It saves your information, which I guess sounds scary, but everything does these days. So that way you can go to the website and most of your information is already there. So it only takes 1 to 2 minutes. You can still customize the template if you'd like to spend more time and add a personal touch, personal details, a story, some of your connections. or you don't have to. You can simply use the template as is if you like. It automatically sends emails to your state representatives and the relevant committee chairs about whatever bill the action alert is in reference to. And then once it's completed, you get an email that has a call script if you want to call and bug your reps that way or leave them a message. Also relevant contact information of those reps and the relevant committee chairs that it's targeting, and a link to report the stance of your legislators. So if you do get a response from one of your legislators like, yes, I'm definitely going to support that priority, or no, I'm not going to vote for that, whichever way you can report, or I'm not sure. If they give you any tidbit of information, you can report it on that link that you get from Action Network, which is just a helpful way to kind of catalog and keep track of those reps as we try to make sure we have enough folks voting the way that we want, that those priorities will pass through both chambers without issue. So for example, we have an action alert here. The link is dropped into the chat, so you can click on that. When you click onto action alert, there's always going to be a little bit of information about what you're in support of. And so you can get, it's, again, takes 1 to 2 minutes, super easy, really distills down some of these bills. I don't know if you've ever looked at some of the bills on the MGA website, but they're a tough read. So Action Alert and the legislative team puts in those little blurbs to make it easy. And then you can fill out those action alerts. I'm not going to do that because then you'll see my screen, but hopefully you are all doing that. I'll give you a minute or two. Also, fun fact here, SURJ members sent over 2,000 action alerts in 2021. So that's a lot of bugging of our reps. That only took just a handful of minutes. And it may seem like a very small action, but sometimes with certain representatives, a deluge is a good thing, because if they just see shows of support, they might be that kind of person who's like, oh, well, I guess everybody wants this, okay. And it'll put that kind of pressure on them. Alrighty, just another minute or two to finish that action alert. But really only a minute or two, because that's all it takes. Also, don't forget, if anyone has any questions throughout this evening about any of the information that we cover, who SURJ is, what we do, how you can get involved, you can look in the chat for a participant named Got Questions, Ask Me. That is the lovely Erica, who will be fielding those questions from you. Alrighty. This should be what hopefully a lot of you just saw as the sample action alert, along with the follow-up email. Has your call script in there, has your contact info, super easy. You can also report back if your legislator says anything. And you can share the campaign with your friends. The SURJ Baltimore testimony team is another one of the ways that we support the partner priorities during the session. So the testimony team gets together and again writes those templates for the different bills that our partners have identified that we are in support of. Usually 2 to 3 a week, depending on what part of the session that we're in, or what committees are meeting, but usually about 2 to 3 days a week, around 10:30 in the morning on the day that the submission is due. So if you're interested in doing this kind of work, it does need to be done the day that you get it. But again, it's a super easy task. There is that narrow window, like I said, and there are the hours there where you can submit the testimony. But to do so, it only takes about 10 to 15 minutes for the written testimony, because again, those templates are there. You submit through the General Assembly website. which is honestly not the worst government website I've ever had to navigate. It really isn't. So you make an account, and it's free, easy, walks you through. You make a super easy account, and then that keeps track of all the testimonies that you submit. You can follow certain bills if you like. You can see what committees are meeting on any given day. If the schedule changes, you can get links to the YouTube if you want to watch any of the committee meetings. So it's a really helpful place to familiarize yourself with, again, if you're interested in doing this kind of work. Guidance for oral testimony, the SURJ testimony team does provide. There are opportunities sometimes where we can support our partners by providing that testimony. You don't have to do oral testimony if you're not interested in public speaking. Just doing written testimony is totally fine and very, very helpful. And because it can be submitted electronically, it's a great way for lots of folks near and far to get involved. I mean, all within your district, obviously, but lots of folks to get involved. You don't have to travel down to Annapolis, is what I'm getting at, to submit the written testimony. The SURJ Baltimore's testimony team submitted over 600 testimonies last year, which is a great number. That is a significant amount of testimony that was provided in support of our accountability partners bills. And several of those bills did pass. And so, you know, those testimonies, I'm sure, had some impact on those passages, which is really exciting and very positive, and definitely a momentum that we like to keep going. So again, if you're interested in receiving testimony team emails, you'll receive the template, all of the instructions that you need, links. It's very easy. And if you don't have time to do it one day, no sweat. You're not beholden if you decide to do this, that you have to send every single piece of testimony that that the testimony team sends out. So if you'd like to do that kind of work, you can sign up at the Google form. The link's been dropped into the chat. And bam, we're circling back. Some of you have probably heard my spiel before. But at the end of this evening, after our accountability partners speak about some of their priorities this upcoming session, or not upcoming, we're in it, this session, we'll be going into breakout rooms by district. So if you don't know your Maryland State Legislative District, not congressional, please go to the link that has also just been dropped into the chat, mgaleg.maryland.gov, and you can look up your legislative district. And then once you get that number, pop that number into the front of your Zoom name. That will be helpful for our tech wizard to break everyone out into the proper groups if that number is at the beginning of your name. So if you have not done that already, although I see a lot of these numbers, so love all these folks following directions. And again, if you don't know how to change your Zoom name, you can hit the 3 dots next to each other in the upper right corner of your Zoom square. It's called a meatball menu, and you can rename yourself and add that number in there. All right, this is exciting because I forget what slides are next, so I'm learning with you all. Ooh, my favorite one. Another great way to support the work of our partners is by donating to them. So we are raising money tonight. Suggested donation is $10, but please donate whatever you can if you are able. It is helpful to continue supporting the work that they do in a very tangible way. And while we're all here, it would be great if we could rally a significant chunk to push their way. That would be awesome. So that link is also going to be dropped in the chat in just a moment. So you can donate through Action Network to our accountability partners, who you will be hearing from tonight. Once again, as a reminder, we do have closed captioning that's available for this session. So here are some quick directions to turn that on if that's a feature you would like. You can click the live transcript button that is in the bottom of your Zoom window and select show subtitle. You can also click view full transcript to see the full text, text thread. And then of course, please be forgiving of any typos because, you know, robots don't always get it right. Also, you can message, privately message SURJ Baltimore if you would like to have that closed captioning available in the breakout rooms. So if that's something that you'd like to continue in the breakout rooms, no problem. Just hit up SURJ Baltimore in a private message. You can find them in the chat. Also, if you have any other questions, you can hit up Got Questions, Ask Me. All right. Ooh, I don't know if we're here yet.
I think we're going to start with Baltimore Transit Equity Coalition, if that's okay with y'all. And I just need to elevate some folks to speak for a moment, so give us a minute.
Absolutely. I will find that slide. You guys are getting a sneak peek. All right. So John, if you can just shoot me a chat when Amanda's ready. We'll be hearing from Amanda DeStefano, the petition campaign coordinator for Baltimore Transit Equity Coalition.
Amanda, are you ready? You should be able to speak now. And you can introduce your coworkers as well.
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you so much for accommodating us. So I'm Amanda DeStefano. I'm the petition campaign coordinator with the Baltimore Transit Equity Coalition. I use she and they pronouns. And I'd love to introduce or have them introduce really quickly my colleagues, Kamaria and Iman.
Hi, I'm not sure if y'all can see. Yeah, I can see me. So hopefully you can see me. My name's Kamaria Moyer. I am Chief of Staff with Baltimore Transit Equity Coalition, also known as BTEC. So grateful to be here with y'all tonight. Thank you so much. And I'm going to pass it on to our newest hire, actually, Iman Cuffy.
Thank you so much, Kamaria. Thank you guys for having us here tonight. My name is Iman. I am the newest outreach coordinator, the newest member of the team here at BTEC, and I'm so happy to be here with you guys tonight. I'm going to be kicking us off with a little bit about BTEC. So I'm excited to kind of talk with you guys about it. So the Red Line Light Rail project is projected to create 4 outcomes. Can we go to the next slide? 10,000 jobs to the regional Baltimore City area, $3 to $6.5 billion in transit-oriented development, dramatic reduction in commute times, rescue of the transit system from the systemic racism that keeps certain communities of riders without access to reliable service while other communities receive consistent consideration. And this is an important part of what we're looking to do, which is really create equity in transit. Can we go to the next slide? So the issue of why transit equity is such a hot pressing issue is that decision is a quintessential example of structural racism in the region, which spurred many of the original Red Line Planning Committee members to action. Shortly after the governor canceled the project, these members gathered with others in the community to form a coalition, which is now all of the lovely members that you see here between me, Amanda, and Kamaria. So a little kind of snapshot of like Baltimore public transit under the MTA. Race-based policymaking regarding public transit has deprioritized public transit in Baltimore for decades. So this isn't a new issue, and it's caused disparate educational and economic impacts predominantly in Black and Brown communities all throughout the city. And this also trickles down even to our school system. Can we go to the next slide? So a recent survey of over 250 students by the Fund for Educational Excellence showed that 73% of Baltimore middle and high school students rely on public transportation to get to and from school. The threat of not in service or late buses, as well as limited hours that student passes are acceptable, prevent students from fully participating in after-school activities such as sports, clubs, internships, and jobs to help support their families, which are very needed. Students are often uncomfortable also during their trips to school with just transit issues that they're subjected to by not being treated as a priority audience for so many of these companies that they have to rely on to get to and from school.
Iman, thank you so much. And if I can jump in, I'm going to pick up here with transit decision-making in Maryland. And I want to just sort of touch on some of these points that y'all are seeing on the screen right now. You may already be familiar with the Highway to Nowhere. Of course, Iman just highlighted for us the cancellation of the Red Line by Governor Hogan in 2015. But the way that these things show up as a racial justice issue for us, for BTEC, for Baltimore, and for the region, it touches on the most basic aspects of life. So good jobs, school, education, food, all of these things. It's a climate justice issue. We want to reduce smog and air pollution, but we've got zero emissions buses that MDOT-MTA wants to purchase. Will they actually go through Black and Brown communities and Black and Brown bus hubs, or will they only be deployed from bus hubs that serve what we call the white L, or the white or more affluent parts of Baltimore City? So issues like this are how we address not only, racial justice, but climate change and just basic quality of life areas that we want to make sure that folks in the Baltimore region have access to of the best standards. Could we head to the next slide? So that brings us to the Transportation Equity Act. On this leg day, we are very happy to join you and talk about the Transportation Equity Act. So this was actually introduced in a previous session as well. Delegate Sheila Ruth has helped us co-write this and is a sponsor in the House, as well as Senator Jill Carter in the Senate. And Transportation Equity Act requires prior analysis of any service changes or project developments to the roadways, seaport, airport, bus, or rail system. So that is something that BTEC refers to as multimodal analysis. And that's important because consider this, MDOT-MTA is the administration that runs not only our highways, our tolls, they also are responsible for projects such as the Red Line, but they only allocate 2% of their budget to the MTA, the Maryland Transportation Authority, and they allocate 77% of their budget to the highways. So with such a little portion of the budget allocated to transit, and the overwhelming majority of transit riders in Baltimore City are Black and Brown, we see immediately the disparity there. Another example here of why we need to pay attention to equity and multimodal analysis, meaning analysis across the different ways that people use transportation, is the fact that we had proposed cuts to the MDOT-MTA budget, 20% to the core bus budget. So the core bus helps folks in Baltimore get from, supposed to help them get from point A to point B. And that's well over 60% Black ridership. I believe it's actually 83% Black ridership for the core bus service. So 20% permanent cuts were proposed in 2020 by MTA, and 8% temporary cuts were proposed for rail. So that would have impacted something like MARC commuter service. 8% temporary cuts. So due to COVID, we will temporarily take 8% of the budget that would impact the white riders on the MARC train. But going forward, henceforth, 20%. of your budget will permanently be taken away for the core Black ridership on the buses. So that's another equity issue that the Transportation Equity Act speaks to. It requires, before major service changes like this take place, that there is an analysis to determine if people with disabilities will be adversely impacted and if one particular demographic of folks are going to be impacted. And we need that. We certainly, the basis of the Transportation Equity Act, it is actually a state level bill, right? But we borrow the language from a federal provision, Title VI of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. So Title VI, we actually filed a complaint under Title VI when Governor Hogan canceled the red line, and that complaint was closed under the Trump administration. So we were not given our due diligence actually under that. So going forward, BTEC decided we are actually going to require by state law that there's a way for anyone to launch a complaint and request that there's analysis here. So we want to write it into state law using, those same provisions from our federal Title VI, that this analysis has to happen beforehand. And if this was state law in 2015, the red line would not have been able to be canceled unilaterally the way that it was. So if we can go to the next slide. Thanks so much. So here's how you can support the Transportation Equity Act. I am told that we have a template letter that's already gone out from SURJ in order for you to contact your representatives, similar to the one I just saw pop up for making sure that children have lawyers when they're being questioned. So please do take a look at the letter. It may have already hit your inbox. I believe it's already hit some of our inboxes. And write to your delegates, write to your senator, make sure that everybody knows it is Senate Bill 23 and House Bill 141. We want to make sure that they know there is robust support. And I would like to just fill you in, our hearings have actually already happened. So yesterday was our hearing in the Senate, and today was our hearing in the House. And we have had 0 non-favorable testimonies. So what that means, all favorable testimonies, everyone who spoke or wrote in about the Transportation Equity Act wrote in favor or spoke in favor of it. So we had over 50 folks writing in. We had over a dozen folks, I believe, between the 2 days that were favorable. And we may have seen less than a dozen on screen because of technical difficulties. We did have some technical difficulties, but Maryland AARP, Maryland Sierra Club spoke out in favor of the bill and requesting a favorable response from the House and the Senate. And that was just amazing. So we had disability advocates in the room. We had so many folks representing the, faith communities. We had folks representing 1199 SEIU healthcare union workers. We had no one that was opposed to us. So that is incredible. And so we are very hopeful. We got some very good questions and some good feedback in those hearings. So the next step is that there is an amendment that MTA is working on in conjunction with Sheila Ruth, and they are going to come to, well, they have actually come to a consensus, and their language is being drafted now to make sure that MTA, who will have to comply with this legislation, is on the same page with everyone who wants to see this legislation happen. So if I can head to the next slide.
Sure. And Kamaria, I'm so sorry. We actually have to move on to the next partner. And I'm also sorry for the technical difficulties. So if you can just wrap it up in like 1 or 2 sentences.
Perfect. Yes. And just taking note there, Again, you may already have sort of a call to action letter from SURJ. Here are the folks that you might want to reference. If you are a constituent of theirs, feel free to shout them out. Next slide. The petition campaign. So Amanda, are you okay if I just speak to this very quickly?
Yeah, I think honestly, we can actually just jump to keep in touch with us. I think that's our last slide, and would love to invite folks to get involved with our legislative advocacy work as well as our petition campaign. This is all of our contact information. I can also try and drop this in the chat so that we can share it with y'all, but please join us. We need everybody in this fight for transit equity. So thank you so much for your time, and we'll look forward to working together.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. And thank you for being flexible again with technical difficulties and time. That's a lot of great information, a lot of great ways to get involved, great ways to keep in touch. Again, appreciate you making the time to be here tonight and share that with us. I am going to hopefully make it to our next accountability partner is going to be CASA. Leanna Harrison is going to speak on behalf of CASA. I believe they're also going to cover some of the priorities for justice, safety, and jobs, Campaign for Justice, Safety, and Jobs, also known as CJSJ, and the Maryland Coalition for Justice and Police Accountability. So lots of acronyms. You can take it away, Leanna.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Leanna Harrison. I'm the Research and Policy Analyst for CASA in Baltimore and Central Maryland region. Excuse me for not having a presentation ready. We're currently in the middle of our immigrant lobby night, where we are speaking with some of our local representatives, and we're having our members share their testimonies. But I'm really happy to be here with you all to speak on the behalf of our 120,000 plus all-time members. CASA is the largest electoral organization fighting for immigrant rights in the Mid-Atlantic region, and I'm here to speak on behalf of them with our allies and voters for the SURJ Anti-Racist Legislative Day, and to turn our legislative priorities into reality. And excuse me if I go off of the presentation that you have provided. I have my own notes here, but we'll keep going. So our priorities for the 2022 legislative session include universal representation in deportation hearings, which you can see is House Bill 114, Senate Bill 129. Another one of our priorities is the Healthy Children Equity Act, as well as the Access to Care Act. The moratorium on evictions for persons seeking rental assistance, SB 384, funding access to counsel in eviction proceedings, and just cause evictions. So I'll start with universal representation in deportation hearings, and just explaining a little bit as to why this is important to the communities that I represent specifically. So universal representation or access to counsel is a priority for our Maryland community members who face deportation, because unlike with criminal hearings, individuals facing deportation have to pay for their defense attorneys. The way we've been mitigating this in the Baltimore region is organizations such as CASA and the CARE Coalition, together with NEMA, have been able to support folks facing deportation by triaging. But Baltimore City has been able to support demand, Baltimore City has been able to support, but demand is higher than what resources allow for, not just in Baltimore, but in other Maryland jurisdictions that don't have these resources. Within CASA Maryland and CASA Baltimore, many of our students through our Mi Espacio program and our other wraparound services and programs for youth, we've seen the difference between someone who goes to trial with an attorney and someone who goes to trial without an attorney. One recent example, last year, we had a 17-year-old in Baltimore County who had ICE come to his home in search of someone else. Within that search, ICE arrested him and detained this high school student and began deportation proceedings. CASA community organizers were able to refer the case to CARE Coalition and to provide representation. Without this representation, he would have been left to defend his case on his own, which would have ultimately led to his deportation. There are many cases like these that nonprofits have limited capacity to serve, and this is why we fight at the state level, so other municipalities can develop programs similar to what we have in Baltimore City to support these immigration cases. We want to ensure that everyone has universal and free representation provided by the state. And then touching on tenants' rights, we want to make sure that there's funding, access to counsel and eviction proceedings for our community members as well. In addition to emergency protections, a variety of long-term legislative reforms are needed to address the ongoing housing crisis that tenants have faced long before the pandemic. As a member of Renters United Maryland, CASA is fighting to completely overhaul the eviction process and take steps toward affordable housing for all. Within that, we have emergency eviction protection, funding for access to counsel and eviction proceedings, and just cause eviction. Moving forward to the Access to Care Act. Since its establishment in 2010, the Affordable Care Act has allowed for 28 million people across the country to gain access to affordable care. Unfortunately, undocumented immigrants are not ineligible for care through this program, including the 275,000 plus undocumented immigrants here in Maryland. The Access to Care Act would change that by ensuring all income eligible Marylanders can purchase coverage through the exchange, regardless of status. This opens up the Maryland Health Benefit Exchange coverage to all Marylanders, who meet the regular ACA eligibility regardless of their immigration status. The Access to Care Act also establishes a state subsidy program to ensure newly covered individuals have the funding to receive care required. This care required the state to submit a state innovation waiver to allow Maryland to make this change to eligibility. And lastly, we wanted to speak on meaningful police reform. As a member of the Maryland Coalition for Justice and Police Accountability, CASA is fighting to continue remaining the role, presence, and responsibilities of police in Maryland. So one of our legislation is counselors, not cops, or our SRO bill. Overwhelming evidence shows that police presence in schools increases the likelihood of arrest, that Black and brown students are disproportionately impacted. This legislation takes steps to remove school police officers from schools and instead reinvest state dollars into mental health support for students, wraparound supports, and other restorative approaches. Secondly, we have Quam's Law, which is addressing body-worn cameras, named in honor of 20-year-old Kwamina Akron, who was murdered by plainclothes police officers in Montgomery County earlier this year with no video evidence. Quam's Law requires that plainclothes officers wear body cameras as a means of pursuing justice and accountability. Excuse me, that was last year. Clarification of Baltimore City Civilian Board roles is our last concern. In the last legislative session, lawmakers passed police reform measures that mandated a police accountability board, or a PAB, in every jurisdiction that will provide some community oversight over police departments. Baltimore City, however, already has a civilian review board, or a CRB, in place that existed for decades. In this session, legislation is needed to give the CRB the responsibilities of the mandated PAB. So that is an overview of our priorities for the 2022 legislation. I'm going to say thank you for listening, and I congratulate you all for allying and rallying with us as we continue to support our community. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Leanna. Have a great rest of Immigrant Lobby Night.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, our next accountability partner that we'll be hearing from tonight is going to be Out for Justice. So forgive me, you all. You're going to, I believe, see some of these slides again. Oh, can I not go backwards?
Use the left arrow.
There we go.
Back a little more.
I think every time someone pops into the waiting room, it like doesn't let me do it anymore. I have to click back again. But it's great that people are coming in. I'm not upset.
Yeah, somehow I'm able to let people in, so I'm letting them in.
That's wonderful. All right. Thank you all for bearing with me and my fumbling with
Okay,
technology.
I'll start talking as you figure it out.
Yes, go ahead, Nicole.
Go with the flow and we make it work. Good afternoon. My name is, well, evening. My name is Nicole Hanson-Mundell. I am the Executive Director of Out for Justice. I'm apologizing that I'm in my car, but for those of you who know me, I am still working and I'm still supporting our people in community. So I apologize for being in my car and not in, a nice cozy place. But one, thank you all for coming. This is an amazing group, almost at 100 people attending this legislative night. And so that's amazing. I want to thank SURJ for always showing up for racial justice. And you are doing amazing work. I want to lift up one of our ancestors in this space, the late Betty Robinson, because it was she who brought me to SURJ. It was she who really laid the groundwork for how white folks show up for racial justice. And so I always want to make sure that we elevate her voice, that we recognize her work, and that we continue. I'm still admitting people. I don't know how I get the right to do that. But yeah, so just a moment of, I don't think she would have wanted us to be silent. I know Betty, she would have wanted us to be loud in her honor and stand up in her honor. And so there is no moment of silence. There is a moment for us to continue to rile ourselves up and stand up in the name of justice. And I know that these are very difficult times for us, right? As we're, and I'm going a little off pitch because that's where my energy is going, right? That we are in some very unique times, right? 2 years or so in COVID, our lives have changed dramatically. The way we show up, the way we do work has changed dramatically. And many of us hear the news every day that is telling us that we live in a horrible city, right? That this city is plagued with violence. It's so bad. And while we do have our challenges in this city, this call is a reflection of the great human beings that exist in our city. The people on this call and the people who are your accountability partners advocate for individuals who are at a disadvantage in many ways, right? That there are laws and policies that are designed and that are structured to make our lives a living hell, quite frankly, right? We're in a time where you all are you've been hearing about policies that seek to reduce incarceration, not lock people up, right? And not add more criminal penalties to the code. And you have to reckon with supporting these things, but also seeing what you see every day and hearing what you hear every day about that we need more police and we need harsher laws. We need to lock people up. And so I just encourage you all to stay the course, continue to support in the ways you support, because all people deserve a second chance. If it were not for somebody giving me a second chance, you would not know the Nicole Mundell you know today. Because there was a time that I was not making good decisions. There was a time I was not making good choices. And because somebody believed in me and was willing to give me another chance is the reason why I'm here today. I think many of my colleagues talked about much of the policies that we're supporting this session. Out for Justice, and this year we decided not to take on a heavy legislative agenda. The members decided that we wanted to focus on implementing the laws that was passed last year, making sure those laws work. One of our voting rights bills that we passed, we're seeing the fruits of our labor. We're seeing that because we stayed on the Board of Elections in the 2020 election, and because we demanded that they get ballots behind the walls, that now we're seeing the Board of Elections talk about the reentry community and talk about the need to give access, the need to share information on that website. And they're talking about the reentry community as if they've always talked about the reentry community around voting in forever, right? So what we decided is that a lot of our approach is passing laws and policies, ensuring that the policies that we're passing includes accountability, some consequences for agencies not doing their job, and some steps and some roadmaps into how this law will work. And so we're deciding that we're going to take on our women's pre-release bill and demand funding there. But we want to really focus on the laws that have been passed and what is our state agencies doing. Am I paused? Can y'all hear me?
Yep, they can. Everybody else can't talk except y'all.
Oh, okay.
And Nicole, just so you know, I'm here too. This is Chris Dews. I got a PowerPoint slide for women's pre-release.
Great, great. Oh, I didn't know you was, I forgot. Okay. So yeah, we have our women's pre-release that we want to continue funding. We want you all to encourage your legislators to fund pre-release, simply fund pre-release, right? This is something that when you're sending out your emails, just remember to tell your legislators to fund pre-release, because this is an issue that deserves to be funded. It doesn't just deserve to be in words. It deserves to be shown that it's a need. It deserves the attention of all Marylanders, because when women coming out of our prisons and jails are equipped with the necessary skills, they are able to thrive in our communities across the state. So I'll end there because my colleague Chris, I think we share in time. So I won't come down off my soapbox, but I just want you all to stay the course, stay focused, and continue to show up for racial justice. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. So first of all, my name is Christopher Dews. I'm a senior policy advocate at the Job Opportunities Task Force. Been working with Nicole for years now on a variety of different capacities. And so I also want to thank SURJ. You guys have been excellent partners in reaching out to legislators and just bearing with me as JOTF has gone through a couple of transitions in the recent times. Also, I think Erica is on the call too, so a special thanks to her for coming out to the All Night Community Resource Clinic. But jumping right into this, so one of the bills that we are also looking to support, of course, is the Women's Pre-Release Center. It will be the first it will be the, well, not the first, but the only women's pre-release center in the state of Maryland. It's very important. The bill was a very hard-fought piece of legislation. It is now passed. It just needs to be funded. And the fact that the bill is passed, but there's no money behind it is, of course, a serious problem when it comes to any piece of legislation. The second one we want to look at really quickly has to do with criminal record expungements. Whoops, that's not right. Criminal record expungements. There are two big bills that are coming in right now. And in fact, some of these are going to be heard on Tuesday. Two of these are going to be heard on Tuesday because life is wild. And one of them has to do with the expansion of automatic expungements of non-convictions. One of the non-convictions being probations before judgments, which means a person pled guilty to a probation, which if you complete the probation, you then no longer are necessarily considered guilty. However, you have to wait 3 years and you have to petition to get that expunged off your record. Many people who did a probation before judgment do not necessarily know that they have something that will pop up on a criminal record, even though it pops up as a non-conviction. So what this bill was going to do is going to expand the automatic expungement statute, which we passed in 2021 for acquittals, dismissals, and nolle pros, simply being that if you were not found guilty, that the state will automatically expunge them from your record. We want to expand that law to include probations before judgments as well as stats. That bill is being heard this Tuesday at 1 o'clock. Tomorrow, well, actually tonight, I have a sample testimony that I'm going to be sending out to members of SURJ. So you guys can either write in using that and then submit your testimony tomorrow. I will send an email about all that tomorrow morning. Or you can just, I will send out a policy alert where you can click one button and then reach out to all the legislators on the Judiciary Committee. That's the first piece, big piece of legislation. Second big piece of legislation, so weird. Why is it doing that? Is the REDEEM Act. The REDEEM Act is basically reducing the expungement waiting periods. The way expungements work, after you have completed your sentence, so you've gotten sentenced, you've done your time, you've done all mandatory parole or probation, now a waiting period starts. For most misdemeanors, it is 10 years an individual has to wait before they can get it expunged off their record. For most non-violent felonies, it is 15 years. And for certain contact misdemeanors, like second-degree assault, a person has to wait 15 years. That's 15 years of waiting before you can get back into your life. So what we're looking to do, we're partnering with a variety of organizations, including the Maryland Volunteer Legal Service, the Office of the Public Defender, to reduce the waiting periods from non-convictions from 3 years to immediately, overriding what's called the tort law, more on that later. From PPJs to immediately upon completion or probation, from stats from 3 years to 1 year, non-violent really misdemeanors in general, from 10 years to 3, contact misdemeanors from 15 years to 5, and non-violent felonies from 15 years to 5. The goal is to get the 1.5 million Marylanders who have a criminal record better access to employment so they can move on with the next phase of their lives. Once again, this is after they have completed all forms of sentencing. The last issues that we want to look at, I'm going to scroll through this, is motor vehicle laws, specifically looking at auto insurance. Right now in the state of Maryland, most people are going to drive to another county for employment. 9% of the jobs in the Baltimore region, as reported by the Baltimore Sun through the University of Michigan, 9% of the jobs can be reached within 1 hour, one way by public transit, which means 91% of the jobs you really can't reach by bus. That being said, you need a valid driver's license, affordable auto insurance, and of course, a vehicle if you are going to maintain sustainable employment. And at JOTF, that's our mission, is to get lower wage workers advanced to higher wage jobs. So, auto insurance affordability. Drive uninsured in the state of Maryland, it's a $1,000 fine up to 1 year in jail or both for the first offense. This is hilariously 600,000 Marylanders, 14.1% of Maryland drivers drive uninsured because they can't afford it. That's because in specifically lower income African-American zip codes, they disproportionately skew the rates. The Baltimore-Towson metropolitan region has the highest racial disparity in auto insurance premiums in the nation, with predominantly African-American zip codes paying 94% or double what white zip codes have to pay. And then when you factor in credit history, those with poor credit pay 123% more on average than those with excellent credit. Bankrate has put out a study on this. The Consumer Federation of America has put out a study on this. And JOTF, of course, has put out videos. And now we've had testimonies on this issue as well. So what this means is that we got to lower the cost of auto insurance. The only way we can do this is if the legislator removes non-driving factors, credit history, zip code, income, occupation, gender, all these things factor in. And despite the fact they got nothing to do with your ability to drive or even your actual driving record, they disproportionately skew the rates for lower income people of color. It's a huge issue, just like license suspensions for child support, huge issue. It stops people from being able to get to work. So all that to say this, when it comes to our policy recommendations, we just want to look at getting rid of the collateral consequences of a criminal record I said this already, but 25% of Marylanders, 1.5 million Marylanders, according to the National Employment Law Project, have something that will pull up on a criminal record. You got a record, housing is off limits. A lot of times, occupational licensing, employment, and even public assistance, and even bank loans are off limits because you have something that'll pop up. We want to minimize that, expand access to criminal record expungement, fund the Women's Pre-Release Center, fund the judiciary's pretrial home detention, another conversation for a different time, and ensure that we don't have people incarcerated because they cannot afford the auto insurance premiums. That's basically all that we have. I'm open to any questions that anybody has on any of these issues. Some of them I did not get a chance to go over because I'm operating off a limited time. And I can see Barbara giving me that look right now. So I'm going to stop talking and open it up to everybody else.
Awesome. Thank you so, so much, Nicole and Christopher. I am amazed, Christopher, at how much you are able to cover so succinctly in such a short time. That is truly a skill. So thank you so much. Absolutely. Thank you to all of our accountability partners who are here tonight. I just want to take a moment to shout out those folks taking time out to come and talk to all of us. And again, thank you all for taking time out of your evening to come and listen. And I do believe, and I just want to mention, because it is a delegate who was mentioned earlier as sponsoring a bill that is one of our accountability partners' priorities, but I believe Delegate Sheila Ruth is here. So I just want to shout out delegates who take the time to also come to these types of events. So thank you very much.
Yep, because Delegate Ruth is a core advocate at core. And that is what we need from our delegates. We need delegates that come from the ground. So we want to make sure that y'all lifting her up and protecting her in Annapolis because, and I didn't mean to take over, but oftentimes when we have legislators who go against the status quo, they will attack them, right? They will make it hard for them. So let's make sure we continue to lift her up to show the state of Maryland that she has supporters out here because, you know, we can't be asking these legislators to champion our legislation and to fight for reforms that the status quo don't want, but we're not lifting them up. We're not showing up for them. We're not blasting them on social media. So we got to make sure that we show up for legislators who are willing to show up for us. So whatever you all can do in your spare time to give her a shout out on Twitter or to give her a shout out on Facebook or to attend one of her hearings or whatever, do that because those type of legislators are far few in between. And so make sure that we're protecting our legislators that are willing to stand up for racial justice.
Absolutely. It's important if we're gonna ding our legislators and contact them when they don't do things we want, that we should also thank them for doing the things that we do want. So next, I'm gonna share my screen again. And let's see if I can master this. Again, thank you all for your patience this evening. Our next accountability partner is Organizing Black. And we have Rob Farrell and Broderick Pitts who are going to be speaking on behalf of that organization. So take it away, folks.
Good afternoon, good evening, all. I'm so glad to be here and be speaking with you all. I am Rick Pitts. I'm joined by Rob Farrell, and we are from Organizing Black. And I will be speaking with you today about a bill currently numbered SB 157. SB 157 is currently a bill being heard in the Maryland State Legislature on the Senate side, and it's known by HB 433 on the General Assembly side. This bill originally was to help make the Baltimore School Board more equitable by changing a few things. Currently, as it stands, we are focusing on two very specific areas of changing the school board. As most of you know, Baltimore is a predominantly Black school system, and in the state of Maryland, it is treated as such. Reasons being, there is currently no pay for school board commissioners, which is deeply unfortunate. Baltimore, with a city who has by far the highest poverty rate and lowest median income in the state of Maryland, is the only one of only two jurisdictions, I'm sorry, who does absolutely no compensation for its school board commissioners. Because of this, which I believe is by design, there is a very limited pool of individuals who can actually fill and operate in those seats as school board commissioners. Additionally, there is also a vast lack of accountability within the school board because they are not voted on in our regular elections. How we seek to achieve that will come in the next session. We will absolutely be introducing another bill to help further expand the elected seats on the school board. Additionally, with this year's bill, we will be seeking to expand the number of student seats. Currently, there's one student member of the board, and it is drawn from a very limited number of city schools who participate in the CBC, which is basically a student organization of student councils within Baltimore City, but it does not include every school. We would love for all the schools, including those who don't always have the resources, the alumni backing, or the funding to provide student government associations for their students to also be able to participate and have a voice in the Baltimore City School Board, because there are far more than just the elite schools in Baltimore City that need to be heard. I'm sorry if I'm talking too fast for anyone. If you have a desire for me to slow down, just shout me out in the chat. I'll be paying attention to that. And finally, the last point, in addition to student member of the board, would be the expansion of the student members of the board from one individual to two individuals. And we would love for the students to be able to have someone to lock in with. Of course, as adults, we love to have a partner in whatever we do. I myself have a partner in organizing, when I can reach out to my brother Rob, and he can reach out to me when we need things done, if we don't understand something, or if we need further guidance on things. Our student member of the board in Baltimore City does not have that luxury, because they are by themselves. A lot of times, because they are so limited in the conversations they can participate in the board, they are lost. They don't always know what's going on, and they need extra guidance. So if we could put another student member there with them to help walk along that road with them, to form a delegation of sorts within the school board, it would help to further support our students. Yeah, and I believe that is all. We have testified before the education committee. I believe it's EHEA committee last week, and we will be testifying tomorrow before the Baltimore City delegation, which, because this is a local bill, will be receiving deference in this matter. I thank you all again so much for your time. Organizing Black, thank you for allowing us to speak with you all. I see some of my favorite people in here. Hey, Jesse, who's been working on a lot of projects with me. So thank you so much. And I can't wait to work with you all in the future.
Awesome, Rick. Thank you so much for breaking that down for us. And I believe, if I have read my schedule correctly, that we are about to get into breakout groups. So
we got Maryland Justice Project.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I must have, oh yes, Maryland Justice Project. I apologize. So here we go. We have Anushka Vakil and Ava Levin who are going to speak on behalf of Maryland Justice Project.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, it wasn't letting participants unmute themselves, which is why there was that awkward break, that awkward silence, but hopefully you guys can all hear me. Hopefully there are no issues now. Hi, everyone. My name is Ava Levine. I'm here along with Anushka, and we're here representing the Maryland Justice Project. I'm going to begin by speaking about one of the two bills that Maryland Justice Project is working on this session, and that's the primary caretakers bill. So in the Senate, this bill is SB 21, and in the House, this bill is HB 337. Essentially, when a person is convicted of a nonviolent crime, the primary caretakers bill would allow defendants to file a motion requiring judges to consider a person's primary caretaker status in sentencing. In the bill text, a caretaker is defined as someone who is responsible for the dependent's needs, such as housing, health, education, and financials. We are looking at both children as dependents as well as elderly dependents, such as a vulnerable adult. Now, if the judge determines that the convicted person is a caretaker of a dependent, the judge is asked not to send that person to incarceration, but rather to a suitable community-based alternative. The judge has a lot of discretion here, meaning they can choose exactly what that alternative is. Some examples would include home confinement, substance abuse treatment, or job training, really any program that both provides the caretaker with some of the support they need, as well as the ability to stay in their community and continue taking care of their dependent. So for some of the logistical background of this bill, the primary caretakers bill is modeled on similar legislation that has passed in Massachusetts, Tennessee, Missouri, and Louisiana. We see that politically diverse set of states is a plus for us. We do believe this is a nonpartisan issue. It affects women, children, families. I think we can all agree, regardless of political affiliation, that keeping families together will help our communities. This bill is critical for a few reasons. Number one, having an incarcerated parent is classified as an adverse childhood experience by the CDC, meaning development of a child is severely impacted by having an incarcerated parent. Children who have incarcerated parents have been shown to have higher rates of physical and mental health problems, including depression, anxiety, high cholesterol, and HIV and AIDS. This bill is particularly relevant for women. Studies estimate that approximately 2/3 of incarcerated women are the primary caretaker to at least one child. When mothers are incarcerated, in more than half of the instances, the child is sent to live with a grandparent, while only about 25% of the time do we see the child go with the father. Potentially most shocking, children of incarcerated mothers are about 8 times more likely to enter the foster care system as opposed to children of incarcerated fathers. As of our most recent information, we do know that there are 239 women incarcerated in DPSCS correctional facilities across the state simply because of nonviolent offenses. So we do expect that this bill will have quite a big impact on ending family separation because of incarceration. Finally, of course, I'd like to highlight the effect that this bill will have on Maryland's communities of colors. I think most of us here know that our so-called justice system has unfairly targeted communities of color for a really long time, particularly Black communities. While 30% of Maryland's state population is Black, we know that 70% of the prison population is Black. The primary caretakers bill will help divert people of color from ever entering the carceral system in the first place, which hopefully will reduce this disparity. We at Maryland Justice Project really appreciate the support SURJ has shown us thus far. To reiterate what I said at the top, the primary caretakers bill is SB 21 in the Senate and HB 337 in the House. We're being sponsored by Senator Carter and Delegate Lopez. Our first hearing date is this upcoming Tuesday at 1 p.m. And we are looking to have people submit both oral and written testimony as to some of our specific needs. Anyone here who is a constituent of Senator Sidnor on the Judiciary Committee, or on the Judicial Proceedings Committee, that would be much appreciated if anyone could get in contact with him. Additionally, anyone here who is a resident of Delegate 46, I'm sure a lot of people here know Delegate Clippinger is the chair of the Judiciary Committee on the House side, where we ultimately expect this bill to be heard as well. So anyone who can ask him to show support for the bill, that would be appreciated. In regards to testimony, if anyone here can speak to the legal necessity of the bill, that would really be appreciated. The primary caretakers bill was initially introduced in 2018, but it failed to make it out of committee because many legislators argued that judges already can consider a defendant's primary caretaker status. while judges can consider this info, it is not a legal requirement that judges consider this info. So in our current system, we're essentially relying on the individual generosity of particular judges to consider a defendant's primary caretaker status. Of course, while we may have some good judges, we also know that not all judges will be as generous. If all judges were as generous, we wouldn't see so many people who are convicted of nonviolent offenses being incarcerated and separated from their families. I want to make sure Anishka has enough time to talk about her bill as well, so I'll end it up here. I know John has prepared really great draft testimony. Besides that, I'm going to put a little bit more information about the Senate hearing in the chat, as well as my personal email address in case anyone has any questions or wants to get involved further with the bill.
Thank you so much, Ava. And just on that note, it has been really incredible just hearing from all of the amazing advocates and legislators we have here today. I personally have learned so much about some of the bills that are being introduced. Just to wrap us up, I'd really like to discuss the second bill that we're bringing forth, which is the Prevention of Forced Infant Separation Act. That's HB 454. And this really builds upon those themes of, keeping families together that Ava just touched on. It's sponsored by Senator Jill Carter and Delegate Leslie Lopez, so same sponsors for both the bills. And it's really targeted towards the needs of women in incarceration, especially those who are pregnant and give birth while incarcerated. So approximately right now, about 10% of women who are in DPSCS correctional facilities are pregnant, and about 60% of these pregnancies will result in a live birth. So 60% of these women are going to go into labor while incarcerated. Currently, pregnant women who go into labor are going to be separated from their infant as soon as they are discharged from the hospital, which means that most incarcerated women have about 48 hours with their newborns before that baby is actually taken away and placed with an alternate caregiver or enters the foster care system. Now, of course, unsurprisingly, this forced separation leads to lifelong developmental consequences, PTSD, substance use disorders, and a lot of issues for the infant when they enter adulthood. And mothers who are separated from their newborns are more likely to experience postpartum depression, feelings of extreme powerlessness, grief, feelings of detachment. I personally have spoken to a lot of women who have had their babies taken away because of this policy. And I mean, just the stories that you hear are absolutely heartbreaking, just absolutely heartbreaking. So in 2021, the bill that we're bringing forth right now is actually based off this bill in Minnesota called the Healthy Start Act, which was passed in 2021, last year. So this bill was the first bill in the country that allowed incarcerated mothers to remain with their infants after birth. It received a lot of bipartisan support and it's going to be implemented this year. Our Maryland version is a little bit different. So it expands upon SB 684, which is the pre-release bill that I know Odd for Justice spoke about. We're just building off of some of that work. And essentially this bill allows women who are at pre-release status and who are pregnant to be transferred to this pre-release status for the duration of their pregnancy and up to 1 year postpartum. For pregnant women who are not eligible for pre-release status, they will still have access to infant bonding programs, increased visitation with their infant, and also increased visitation with the father or secondary caregiver. And really all of these programs are just aimed at ensuring that there are strong bonds formed between this infant and the mother. Additionally, all incarcerated pregnant women in DPSCS custody will have access to a designated case manager to connect the mother with housing, employment, and all these social services that the mother is going to need to, stay on her feet once she gets out of the carceral system. So this legislation, of course, really benefits communities of color, especially our data shows that about 70% of these pregnant women are Black women, and they're more likely to need access to the social services that this bill connects them to. So clearly there is a very strong need from Maryland to prevent the cruel and harmful separation of infants just days after birth from their mothers, but there is a very clear legislative solution here. We really hope that all of you at SURJ will support the Prevention of Forced Infant Separation Act as this bill is going to help incarcerated mothers form strong attachments with their newborns and lead to better health outcomes and serve as a strong incentive against recidivism. And we also hope that all of you here can join the MJP's fight in keeping families together and ending forced infant separation. So this bill currently doesn't have a hearing, but the best way that you can support our work is signing on to the letter of support that SURJ has sent out and also joining our coalition for updates on both bills. We're also really looking for experts on child development and also individuals who've been directly impacted by this issue to submit both written and oral testimony. But once again, thank you so much for having us here, SURJ, and thank you to all of our wonderful advocates here today for just their incredible work in Maryland and Baltimore, and just all the amazing stuff that you guys do. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, both Ava and Anushka. That was, again, a very great summary of those two issues. And honestly, across the board, our partners have done an amazing job taking so much information and cramming it into tonight's presentations. So thanks again to all those partners for having that information so digestible for us. And now, I believe, if I've read my schedule correctly, this time, we will be moving into our breakout rooms. Before that, I am going to mention the donations again. Now that you've heard from all of our wonderful partners, accountability partners, and about some of the important issues that SURJ Baltimore will be supporting. And if you are also interested in supporting the work of these partners, there is no better, more tangible way to support that work than by donating if you can. So suggested donation is $10. But if you're able to donate more, that is always appreciated. Again, it's a very tangible way to support these wonderful organizations. So if we can raise $500 tonight, we would be able to give $100 to each of our accountability partners who spoke tonight as a acknowledgement of their time, and again, the wonderful work that they do in general, but also in preparing that information to share with us. So that link is in the chat if you would like to donate. You also can do it tonight and donate in the future. Also follow these organizations on their social media to get updates. It's an important way to stay involved. And again, just to give the boost on social media. I'm fairly certain, as I was looking through the chat, that most folks have done the due diligence of putting their legislative districts into their Zoom names at the beginning. That'll be helpful when we go into the breakout rooms shortly here by district. So again, that link is in the chat if you do need to do that still. Again, your state legislative district, not congressional. Again, this is just a recap of some of the ways that you can get involved if you are moved by some of these issues tonight and you want to support the amazing work of our accountability partners as well. You can come to the testimony writing party. So those great templates that we talked about that folks are able to use and modify for written testimony. There's going to be a testimony writing party this Sunday from 4 to 6. Not in person, it's going to be on Zoom. So you can do it in the comfort of your own home, but we'll all be together kind of in a virtual space to share resources and to bounce ideas off each other and to really crank through some of these testimonies. The testimony team has done a great job of having a bunch of templates at the ready. So not a lot of work to be done from scratch. But it's helpful to have more minds and folks in the room, virtually, of course. So if you're able to come to that, that would be helpful. You will be trained if you have any questions. And even if you're just interested, pop on by, see what that's about. And then if you're interested in writing that testimony, you'll be fully supported in doing that. The next legislative team meeting for SURJ Baltimore is this coming Tuesday from 7 to 8. It is also, again, virtual. It's the regular meeting of SURJ's legislative team leaders. Anyone is welcome if you're interested in being a part of that work. So you can sign up through Action Network. There are links that are being dropped into the chat if you'd like to sign up for either the testimony writing party this Sunday or the legislative team meeting next Tuesday. You can also join the testimony team if you want to be a regular supporter and writer of testimony. You may also be trained if you're so interested in setting up those action alerts to go out and things like that. So if you're interested in kind of working behind the scenes to support the work the legislative team does and the work of our accountability partners in getting these policies passed, these are some great ways that you can do that. Woo, that was a lot. Thank you all again for your patience and grace as we dealt with technology and all of that. And again, we're going to break out into district sessions. This is where we're going to take some action. You'll be able to connect with folks who live in your district, kind of see who's in your neck of the woods. It'll be a slightly smaller group, so you can kind of see folks' faces. You won't have to listen to me anymore. And then you'll be able to talk about ways that you're able to take a tangible action. You and your district will be able to take a tangible action towards supporting one of these policies for our accountability partners.